Well, hello, you amazing human. Thanks for joining me. Today, I wanted to talk about. I had a really funny experience driving home today from town, and I was coming into a junction, and there I was actually driving over the speed limit. So I slowed down kind of because I don't want to get a fine. I've had a fine there before, and we shouldn't drive faster than we can. And also, just to be kind to other people that are trying to get in and out of the junction. And another car then came out of the junction and turned onto the road and continued, and then another one turned in and so on. Because I slowed down, they had time to do this. And when something happens and then you just are hit with this realization, about the meaning of life. And I thought, like, me slowing down could have had such an incredible, powerful impact on these people for good or for bad. And I will never know. The famous butterfly effect. So say I slowed down and the car that was coming out onto the main road then came out, say 2 or 3 seconds before than if I had just driven on a bit faster, no? And now he drives onto the road, and now a bit further on, he collides with a truck and something happens to them because he got on before than after if I had gone a bit quicker. Or maybe the opposite happens. You know, I drive a bit faster. He can't come onto the road, so he has to wait 2 or 3 seconds. He get on a bit later, and the truck that would have collided with him doesn't. Either way, I just don't know. I just have no idea. And it just dawned on me how many things we do say, little things that we don't really think are important, but like the ripple effect of them for other people who might never know that what we did or said has impacted them in any way. And I will never know how much I do or say will impact other people. And when you think about it, if you don't know what the consequences are about anything that you do, it makes no sense trying to control it, right? And you know how I am always harping on about not trying to control other people's feelings or thoughts about you or what's going on with them because you just can't. But if you really think about it, no, you actually can't, right? You cannot know what your actions or what you say or your body language, how that's going to influence the other person or the effect it's going to have on them. And this is why it is so important that in your day-to-day life, whenever you do or say something, that you are really aware of your intention behind it. So let's say that I slow down, which I think my intention was good. So it was abide the law and also be gentle to other drivers that might not anticipate me coming driving in faster than the law tells us to do, right? And so my intentions was really good. Now, if the consequence of my action has negative effect, that's not on me. My intention was good. On the other hand, if I now race through the junction, people have to hold back because I'm driving too fast. They come out and then an accident happens. Then my intention was, it was being a bit selfish. I was not thinking about other humans. I was not following the law, whatever the intention is behind it. And because you can never know the consequence of anything you do, it actually extrapolate to the fact that a lot of us are hiding, we're playing small, um, we are not saying what we want to say because we're so worried about what we say or what we do can how people may think about us or what the consequences are going to be. For example, you might not say to your partner you're upset about something because you don't want to have the uncomfortable conversation that comes with it, but you just have no idea about the consequences about you saying or not saying what's bothering you. So you might as well say it because your intention behind it will be, I'm being honest and I am putting my needs out there for my partner to know. Also, for example, a way we could do it is I'm not gonna. Oh my God, that's just a pretty bird outside my window right now. Sorry. I really have a scatterbrain today. I have no idea why. So let's say that a client comes in with a case of something that looks to you from far away. It's just gonna be hemangiosarcoma in the spleen. I do ER work and they come in and the history and the way they are. And in 2 seconds, I evaluate it and I'm like 80% to 90% sure that this is a tumor bleeding into the abdomen. And we don't want to tell them that, right? I cannot be sure. But I could be super honest and say, I want to be honest with this client right now, although I don't have all the data to confirm it, but I want to tell you that I think this is very likely to be this based on my experience and the clinical signs without having any other tests. And that will give the client now the option to think, you know what, that is such a high probability. And it's my Labrador is like 15 years old or whatever. I don't want to put him through any test. Please put him down. So but I normally don't do that, right? I want to play it safe. So I want to scan, I want to show them the images, I want to have a bit more background. And yes, it is obviously better for everyone involved to have an exact diagnosis, but I am taking away from the owner the choice to decide to not have any tests and just call it a day right now. I might someone sometimes tell me if they are asking me upfront, can you please be honest with me and tell me what you think it is so I can make a decision? But often I don't. And I think I want to do it. I want to, thinking about it when I'm now sitting here in safety in my own little home, I do want to be super honest with the clients always and tell them, so they can make their own choice. And often we don't do it because we don't want them to get upset or we don't want them to get angry with us. We want to protect their feeling. And of course, you should do that if you're not really sure. If you're not sure about something, don't start rattling off that it could be some malignant cancer because they're going to get upset and that's just cruel, right? But if you're fairly certain, you could give them the choice, right, of having that honesty. Sometimes as well, we are hiding what we really mean or playing small and kind of sort of agreeing maybe sometimes by not saying what we really mean when we hear colleagues speak, joking or being sarcastic about a client or maybe talking about a peer behind their back, and we don't say our opinion because we don't want a confrontation, we don't want them to think a specific thing about us, and we're not being honest. And in that sense, we are actually living out of alignment, right? We are kind of like we don't want to bother, we don't want to rock the boat, we don't want to say anything. But if you think about it, when you don't know the consequences of your action or your inaction, maybe not stopping this colleague in this moment that he's starting to be sarcastic and actually mean behind the back of a peer, this might escalate into full-time bullying or something, or you might be the next, in line. So you not taking that action at that moment might lead into a much bigger problem along the line that you can just not know the consequences of now. But are you showing up like the person you want to be in that moment, or are you just playing small and kind of like hiding a bit and half laughing, although you don't really want to? And something I was speaking to a client about yesterday was, for example, if your boss challenges you about something, like why didn't you charge more for this patient, for example, like, it was a full consult, why didn't you charge more? And in your opinion, you shouldn't charge a full consult because actually it was just a nail clip, and then they did ask you a few questions, but it's such a good client, they contact back all the time, they had a lot of animals, and in your opinion, it was it was a correct thing to do to charge less because this was like really quickly and it was quite insignificant, and you think it's a service you're giving your client. And then your boss says, well, you should charge it. And then you don't challenge them because you're worried about, again, the uncomfortable conversation you're going to have or what your boss is going to say. And you're like, well, I guess those are just the rules. Instead of standing up for your opinion and say, no, I do think, you were not there in that situation. And I think this was a correct thing to do. And why don't we do it? Well, it's because we don't want the boss to think or say something that's going to make us feel uncomfortable. But in that sense, when you don't do it, you might feel very uncomfortable over and over every time you have really good clients in that maybe could use a bit of a talk, but it's not a full-blown consult and you don't want to charge it. But now you have to do it because you kind of like lean backwards for your boss that time. Another thing we tend to do when we don't really want to be big or stand up for ourselves is soften our comments with, well, I think, or maybe. And I personally do this way too much. For example, when my nurses ask me, okay, so where do you want to start? I will go, well, why don't we do this? Or, well, we could do this. Or, I think it would be best if, when in reality, I'm the authority there, right? I'm the sole charge and I'm telling them what to do. So, in order to be nice, I tend to put it away in a way that seems like they are making the choice. It's sort of a super skill I've got. And some nurses have commented on it, like, how do you always make us do stuff without actually telling us how to do stuff. You make it seem as like our idea, which can be a super skill, a superpower, but it can also sometimes be because I don't want to stand up for my opinion. And in case you challenge me and we end up going with your idea, I don't want to seem that I was stupid. I was kind of stuck on this thing. So that's why I want to kind of soften what I say all the time. And you want to be careful about doing that because you are eliminating your own authority and you are acting in a way that's going to make people think less of you. And you kind of just become this insignificant person, this insignificant employee or boss that doesn't stand up for anything because you don't want to bother anybody and you don't want to stand out. Of course, there's something behind this because we're all different. And I'm sure you know the typical person, and it is more often than not male than females because we just been brought up differently. Females, I say females, women, girls, like I'm always like thinking about animals and humans the same, so that is funny. Um, but so women and girls are often brought up to, don't speak too loud, like why are you shouting? Don't have tantrums and all this. Why boys are more brought up to like, oh, look at him, he's a right little warrior. So I think boys are in general, men are in general more encouraged to stand up for themselves and have a stand and not be so worried about what other people think about them. So there will be maybe in rounds you may say, I think this client could benefit from a blood transfusion because in my opinion, this looks more like an IMHA or something. While your male counterpart might be, this dog needs a blood transfusion and he needs it now. And they just don't give any explanations. They don't soften it with I think or maybe or could we. They tend to be more directly. And it's not that that other vet knows more than you. It's just that they are not afraid of speaking up. They don't hide and they don't play small. And again, you want to think about the consequences of your actions. When you don't stand up for a patient because you have an opinion and you kind of want this to happen, that you really think it needs a blood transfusion. If you are with someone debating the case and they are much more authority than you are, they're likely to kind of win the discussion just because of the way they are and the way they come across. But that might not be the best thing for your patient. Again, we're never going to know, right? Because a lot of times, blood transfusion might save them. They also might have an anaphylactic attack, or it might not be the thing they needed. They should have had something else. Since we don't know, you want to look at what your intention is and what is your best guess with the information you have. And then you want to stand up for your opinion. What's really behind it is that we tell ourselves we want to be humble a lot of times. I do know I lie to myself about this. I want to be humble. I don't want to be this like bragger or say I know exactly what it is when I know deep down in science and in medicine, like most of the time we actually have no clue. We just doing wild guesses and sort of confirming the diagnostics, but still when we do a postmortem, it often turns out we are wrong. So I want to be humble and that's a nice thing. But is it also because you don't want to stand out? Do you not want to be, do you know this game where there's a lot of holes and then like moles put their heads out and then you have to dab them on their heads, which is quite cruel. I don't know why we're using moles, but you have to like dab them as the head comes up, and then the more you dab, then you win. And in the fairs and stuff in Tivoli. Maybe you don't want to be that mole. You don't want to put your head out because you risk getting it whacked off by someone with a baseball bat, metaphorically. But what is behind that? Why are you afraid of that? And it's often because we feel it's not safe. And maybe, so personally, I was bullied a lot in school. And because I had such an awkward upbringing with my childhood, I was always really socially awkward. And I actually never really knew what to say that kind of fitted in with what everybody were talking about. So I would often say the wrong thing. And then people would laugh at me. They would laugh. Even the teacher would someone laugh at me, which is not very kind when you think about it. And that would lead to bullying. So in my case, it's about I don't feel safe to say what I mean, to stand up for something. And that's why I will often make my statements as questions. So I will end my sentences with, it could be Pavo, like a question, or don't you think it would benefit from a blood transfusion? So everything kind of like ends, my sentences will end like questions. And you notice sometimes on the podcast, and I try to catch myself doing this, is I say right, and my sentence is right. And I try to say, I literally record myself and watch myself doing it and try to catch it and not eliminate it completely, because I don't want to just like talk like a robot. But when you say right at the end of the sentences, you are unconsciously asking for the approval of the other person, of the listener. And again, you're taking away authority from your statement. So one thing that I work on, and I encourage you to work on, and I also teach on my clients, is like, how can you create safety within yourself and have your own back when you make statements or questions, or you somehow stand up for yourself in a way that seems scary? How can you create that safety within? And one way to do it is obviously knowing that no matter what another person says or how they react, you're not going to beat yourself up afterwards. You're not going to beat yourself up because you know that your intention was good. And there's a famous saying as well that I try to play by, which is, say sorry instead of asking for permission. We always A lot of us are so humble and so afraid to do something wrong that we always like, oh, do you mind if I do this? Do you mind if I do that? Or you say something, well, do you want to hear what I have to say? And instead you could just say it or do it. And then if you're wrong, ask for, just say sorry, oh, sorry about that. Oh, I was wrong, and not make a big deal out of it. But a way to create safety within yourself is knowing that no matter what you say, you know that you like the intention with which you say it, that the intention behind it was good and it was, coming from a good place. And even if you're wrong, you don't have a trouble saying, oh, I was wrong, I'm sorry, because it doesn't mean anything about you being a lesser person or a lesser vet or a worse professional in any way. So I want to encourage you to really think about it this week, about where are you playing small? Where are you not saying what you want to say because you're worried about what other people might think of you or what the consequences are? And have a think every time you do something, just as a little mind game. Think about the consequences of what you do. For example, like little things like slowing down and let somebody out on the road, that you don't know the butterfly effect of anything you do, like a donation you made, someone you smiled to, or the other way, someone you kind of snapped at because you were annoyed. What happens then when they get home, and how are they with their family, and then the kids get upset, and you just don't know the consequences of your actions. So try and play with that little mind game and see if you have a eureka moment like I had, in the way that we don't really know our consequences, the consequences of our actions, but can I stand up for the intention behind it? Like, was I leading with my heart and soul and with love and with courage and standing up for my patients, or whatever it is situation you're in and out of work? Can you do that? And that way create safety for yourself and not beat yourself up when somebody says like, well, why did you say that? Or that's not true, or well, you should chat more, or this is not right, or whatever. No, also dealing with clients, of course, right? It can be really important to know that the intention you said it with is good. For example, defending, the dog's case when the owner doesn't want to euthanize and you think it's the best thing. Can you be honest there and really say what you think, even if the owner's not going to like it? Because your intention behind it is not to prove anything, but to speak up for those that can't speak for themselves. That was all this week. I hope it made sense. See, now I'm doing it again. See, now I'm asking questions. This was an amazing episode, y'all, and it was made with the every best intention. So if you misunderstood anything, that's on you. Love you all. Have a nice week. Bye.